My name is Jim Cannon. I'm with Range Resources. Many of you have met me or know me. And we have quite a few range people here this evening. Let me lay some things out first of all. This meeting tonight, this is not a debate on gas drilling. We've had those meetings. We will continue to have those meetings, both in venues like this and I'm sure in the media. But this meeting is for the purposes of discussing exactly what's going on in Mount Pleasant currently. So if you came here to debate gas drilling, you are in the wrong place. Secondly, we set a time frame for a reason. Otherwise, we would be here all night. We intend to, again, we started late. We still intend to end at around 8 o'clock. People have other commitments, and they've planned around that. We're going to keep this as detailed but brief as possible. Toward the end of this, there will be a time for some limited questions. Again, if you have questions about what we're talking about or discussing specifically, we're more than happy to answer them. All right. Now, there has been, I'll just dive into this. Most of you in attendance this evening got at least one letter from Range recently, and some of you got two. There's been some confusion. There have been a number of media reports that have, I guess, been full of conjecture and opinion as opposed to what really happened or what our intent is as a company. So I'm here to explain that right off the bat. But I have to sort of work my way into this. As you know, there are ordinances in various townships that govern what we do, meaning Range. There is the Oil and Gas Act, which is state law in Pennsylvania, and there are local ordinances which regulate some aspects of our operations. Mount Pleasant has undertaken to rewrite their ordinance, their local ordinance, their local regulations. And that's been going on for some time now, well over a year. In the interim, Range recognized that there were some aspects of our operations that we needed to address. We needed to get, I guess, more stringent ourselves and more detailed in terms of how we address those issues. So Range undertook our own effort to devise what we have referred to and what has been labeled in the press as a model ordinance. Again, it is in the draft stage, so those of you who downloaded the PDF that the township provided to the media, what you have is a draft. It is not a final version, but you get the gist of it. It's for the most part, it is complete. And what we did is we tried to cover every aspect of any ordinance that we've encountered. Questions that pop up at meetings, concerns that residents have, issues that have been brought to our attention by supervisors. We tried to cover all of that in our ordinance, our version, I should say. Again, in the interim, Mount Pleasant Township devised their own ordinance. Under our language, it's actually, well, let me back up. There is language under which we currently operate now. It is, I guess, the old ordinance. And now we have the old ordinance. That's what's on the books, and we have these two versions of a new ordinance floating out there. The Township and the Range version. We are still operating under the existing language, which by no means is stringent or strict. And those of you who have taken the time to read the existing language know exactly what I mean. It does not go far at all in terms of regulating our operations. To be fair, that's why the township decided to redo it. And that's why we decided to take another look as well. Because we recognize most of you, I should say all of you, but most of you are concerned that our operations are not regulated to the point they should be. We understand that. And that's why we wrote the version we did. Excuse me. We've had a lot of discussions with your supervisors, with the township, in terms of what we proposed versus what they proposed. And it wasn't a headbutting contest. We were really hoping to reach a middle ground or a compromise. Obviously, that hasn't happened. That's why we're all here tonight. Under our language, under our ordinance, the one we are proposing, we, the operator, and not just Range, this would apply to anybody who operated in Mount Pleasant, but we would be required to over-communicate. And that's not a requirement you see in a lot of ordinances anywhere. But we built it into ours because we recognize that it's important. You all deserve to know what's going on. on an ongoing basis. Not one meeting and then we'll see you in 5 years. You all need to have a good handle on our operations on a pretty regular basis. One of the requirements was to notify residents of a meeting, a public meeting, to walk through our proposed operations. That was only one requirement in our proposed ordinance. Thus, we had to notify as many people as we could in the township, as many as possible. Our goal was to notify everyone. That was the general letter, the one that had the bullet points that spelled out some of the high points of our version of the ordinance. The stricter regulation, the more stringent regulation than currently exists. So the majority of you got that letter. Some of you, very few of you, got another letter that spelled out some of Range's options and thoughts. That letter was designed to give you some insight, and we only sent that to a few people, 300 approximately. And those were the people who either have an ongoing relationship with us or have demonstrated an ongoing interest in what we're doing. Some folks just are not interested or just don't keep up with what we're doing. So we figured those were the core people who wanted to know where we stood. So that was the issue with the letters. Again, it's been spun out of control and a lot of conjecture. We've heard the theory that it was a divide and conquer strategy, and that's a little silly, especially in a township this size. I think we all know better. Again, it was to adhere to the language in our ordinance. We want to demonstrate to the township in a good faith effort that we're going to start this thing off right. And this is sort of a trial run, if you will, of our version of that ordinance. So we're going to start by complying with the requirements that we built into it to demonstrate that, yes, we do follow the rules, and yes, we do follow the letter of the law. So there's the letter issue. Again, well, I'll dive into the ordinance. The ordinance itself, grab some of these. Again, in that general letter, we spelled out some of the high points. But I have some here, and I don't have them all committed to memory, so bear with me while I read these. In the existing ordinance, it provides drilling as a permitted use. Ours would as well. Setbacks are in accordance with the Oil and Gas Act, 200 feet from protected or inhabited structures. Under our model ordinance, we would voluntarily go out 500 feet. So keep in mind, it's not mandated by the state yet. They're still at 200 feet. Under the existing ordinance in the township, drilling operators are required to submit an emergency response plan. The names and addresses of each property owner within 300 feet of the proposed well and confirmation of notification will be provided. Under our proposed ordinance, we're required to submit an emergency response plan. We will hold a general public meeting prior to drilling. We will then meet with residents within a certain proximity of those well sites. In our case, it's 2,500 feet of each well site. A meeting must be held with township officials and other safety personnel to address site-specific safety concerns. And either fencing or 24/7 security must be provided during active drilling and completion phases of the operation. And you can see the stark difference. That's one example. Our ordinance goes much, much further than the existing language. Some of you might be thinking, well, okay, that's the existing stuff. What about their proposed ordinance? The proposed ordinance, the draft that was initially delivered to us, had things in it that would have attempted to supersede federal and or state law, and they would have been challenged. We communicated that to the township supervisors on a number of occasions. And it wasn't in a threatening manner, folks, I assure you. It was to prevent that. It's not in Range's best interest to have a legal challenge or to drag anybody into court. It doesn't do us any good, it doesn't do you any good, it doesn't do the township any good. And we have bent over backwards to try to establish a good rapport and a cooperative spirit with this township. Now, those of you who have been paying attention, this afternoon, another operator filed suit against a township not too far from here, North Bethlehem. It was a 5-count lawsuit, and it was based solely on their ordinance. This is a township where we attempted to reach out to their supervisors and their solicitor, and they would not return our calls. We attempted to do that because we had a copy of the ordinance, and we recognized in very short order that virtually 60 to 70% of it was illegal. And we wanted to just, I don't know, give them a heads up. They wouldn't return our calls. Another operator did the same thing, and they ended up filing suit against them. We want to prevent that here. We don't want to challenge anything here. Again, all we're looking for is a middle ground. And for whatever reason, we can't seem to find it. I'm going to actually walk through a little minor drilling overview. Probably 90% of you in here are familiar with drilling operations. Most of you have probably seen these slides before. Some of you will fall asleep, and that's okay. But there's always people in the room who have not seen this. So I'd like to run through this really quickly. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into Mount Pleasant specifically. We actually have 3 sites that are built and ready to go. And so I'll walk through that as well. Range Resources started off as an Ohio-based company. Mergers, acquisitions, and name changes brought us to where we are now as Range Resources. Our regional headquarters is in South Point, right up the road. We pioneered the Marcellus in 2004. We've got more than $1 billion invested in Washington County alone. I think upwards of $3 billion in Pennsylvania to date. We employ over 300 people, Pennsylvanians, with thousands of indirect jobs supported by what we do. Marcellus Shale is one shale formation that runs under Pennsylvania, or runs through it, if you will, out of, I don't know, I'm not a geologist, but I know there are a lot, probably 6 or 8 really productive shale formations. But the Marcellus is sort of smack in the middle. That is a picture of the Marcellus. So again, for those of you who have not seen this before, that's where the gas is. The gas is in that rock. This is a map showing some of the shale plays in the U.S. You can see most of them are out west. Down in Texas, you have the Barnett. The Barnett's the most productive shale play in the U.S., giving us about 5.5% of all our natural gas domestically. Now, if you can, I'm blocking their view. If you can look at the Barnett down there in Texas, sort of in the center, and look at the Barnett and then look at the size of the Marcellus, you can see the scope of what we're talking about with this shale, the shale that we're standing on right now. This is a big deal. This is a world-class shale play. Some, again, in the media it's been reported as being the second largest shale play in the world, but there's a lot of gas here. Shale development, there are 4 basic steps: preparation, drilling, completion and production, and then reclamation. The first step is to get the leases. As many of you know, because I know a lot of people in here have leases with us or with another operator. Go ahead. Preparation. Our geoscientists determine the best places to drill. And this isn't about knowing where the gas is. We know where the gas is. It's in the shale. Basically, this is determining the spots that will be the most productive with giving us the least amount of difficulty or resistance when we go down there to drill. Now, they'll use 3D seismic, and they build 3-dimensional models of what's underground, the geology under there. There are certain geologic formations that are not conducive to productive drilling, and that's why they build the 3D models. Again, these aren't like oil sands where you're looking for a deposit. We know that the gas is in the rock. It's what are we going to run into while we're down there drilling, and that's why we build those 3D models. Unitization. If you're in a drilling unit, or you know somebody who's in a drilling unit, basically all that is a big puzzle. It's putting a bunch of contiguous land together so we can have enough land leased to accommodate the length of our lateral bores. We can't drill under your property without your permission, so we have to work something out with the surface owner. Now our laterals, our horizontals underground, they can go out several thousand feet. So we have to account for that on the surface, and that's the point of a drilling unit, is to accommodate those laterals. The majority of the units, I would say all the units, are 1 square mile. Let's see. And the royalties, I mean, we can get into this, but the royalties are divvied out based on the percentage of land that somebody contributes to a particular unit. Site prep, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this site. Well, not this site specifically, I meant this slide. Site preparation really involves going in and leveling off that site. We need a flat surface on which to drill and stage the equipment. We also cut in an access road, and we'll have maps further down that show the access roads. But that's part of the site prep. We have to grade it, we have to clear it off. We'll throw down some gravel to accommodate our trucks. Okay. The next step is drilling. We can do multiple wells on a single site. That wasn't really the case a couple of years ago. We were focused on 1 well per site. Now we're up to multiple wells per site. Footprint, 5 to 6 acres, typically. That's an average for horizontal drilling. The rig that you're looking at is one of the Patterson rigs, and these things were built for range. They call these walking rigs. Really, they slide. They don't really walk. They slide. They have some feet on the corners. And basically, those feet have posts on them. Posts go into a box, and it slides out. The box catches up. It slides out. But they can move 20 or 30 feet in a matter of hours. So it's really sped up the drilling process. Back in the good old days, 2 or 3 years ago, when we'd want to move one of these rigs, if we wanted to move over 20 or 30 or 50 feet to drill another well, we would have had to disassemble all that apparatus, move everything over, and rebuild it. So we were out of commission for a bit. But with these walking rigs, we can speed up the process.
Hey, Jim, how many drill sites can you have on a pad?
You mean how many wells?
Yeah, how many wells? Thank you.
We usually plan for up to 10. And I'll get into that toward the end, Jen.
Okay,
But I'll cover it. We typically plan for 10 on the pads now. Well, typically, for those of you who know about the DEP website, you can track the permits on the DEP website. You can actively track what's being permitted. So we will permit multiple wells. That doesn't mean we're going to drill all of them. Typically, we don't. We'll get X amount of permits and drill half the wells. So, horizontal technology. What we're doing is horizontal drilling. And I don't even think this picture is to scale, because it would be a lot deeper. The vertical portion of these wells is between 5,000 and 8,000 feet, typically, when we're doing Marcellus horizontal wells. So that's 1 mile to 1.5 miles vertically. And then we can go out, this says up to 4,000 feet. Here in Pennsylvania, ours don't really go out that far. Probably averages 2,000. More?
4,000. Almost 4.
Okay. As this says, there's less surface disturbance. If you're doing multiple wells off one pad, and I think we have a slide in here that demonstrates this, it's the same amount of surface disturbance for 5 wells as opposed to doing a vertical well and having a pad for each one of those. When we start the drilling process, we start with what they call the little rig or the air rig. That's the one on the left. And the little rig does the vertical portion. It drills that vertical bore. That little rig will go away and it'll be replaced by the big rig or the horizontal rig. The horizontal rig will it'll finish off that vertical portion and then kick out and go horizontally. In order to drill horizontally, I know if you go back here, go back another one. This is kind of deceptive because it shows that curve at the bottom where we're turning. That curve takes about 1,000 feet, and we don't do it very abruptly. It's not within 10 or 20 feet. It's 1,000 feet to make that turn. And those of you who took fractal geometry understand that if you put straight lines together, enough of them, you can make a curve or even a circle. But that's what we're doing here. We're accomplishing that over distance. But we're using a special component or special piece of string This thing has a bend built into it, and it's got a motor on the end. This is basically the pipe that we put on the end of that. So that's what helps make that turn gradually. And that motor, the motor on the end of that string pulls it along, and you got the rig on the surface pushing it. So you have two different motions there. I like this slide because this shows what they call the doghouse. Those of you who have seen the drilling rigs, you'll see basically a big blue rectangular box attached to the outside of the rig where the flags are. You'll see the U.S. flag and Pennsylvania flag. That is the doghouse. That's sort of an industry colloquialism. It's the control room for the rig, for these horizontal rigs. As you can see in this slide, there's a little bit of technology involved. These things are all computer controlled. You have plexiglass right there where whoever that supervisor is can look right on the rig floor and they can see everything that's going on. And they can control a lot of the processes. And all these computer screens tell them everything that's going on at any given moment. There are also cameras, I don't know if you can see, off to the left, right by that coffee cup, that screen right by the coffee cup. Those are live camera shots. They have cameras all over the site. So that supervisor not only is watching what's going on out there, he's watching the site to make sure all the equipment is functioning properly, there are no safety issues, and frankly that his guys are out there working. This is what I was talking about with surface disturbance. The yellow would represent horizontal drilling, and the yellow box in the middle would be a horizontal, be a pad, okay, a drilling pad. From that pad, you got to be a little creative here. From that pad, we might drill these 10 wells. Each one of those lines is a well. That's a lateral. In order to do those same laterals, get that same amount of gas and cover that same amount of distance, if we were doing vertical wells, those would be represented by the purple boxes. Each one of those would be a drilling site, which means surface impact. Now we put this in here to show people the advantage of horizontal drilling in terms of affecting the surface and the environment. It's reduced by whatever factor that is. That's a nice shot of a drilling pad. You can see that the drilling pads themselves really are, for the most part, square or as close to square as we can make them. Off to the right, you can see the access road that was cut in. And then the access roads typically feed onto some kind of a main artery, whether it's a state road or a township road, some kind of road that will accommodate our trucks and our equipment. One of the biggest concerns anybody has, including the industry, is water protection. So we employ what we call casing. And the casing, and I know I'm oversimplifying this, but you can see it on the diagram. Casing involves starting those bores, starting those wells with a really large diameter pipe. And we sink that to a certain depth. And we backfill it with concrete. And we sink a smaller diameter pipe, backfill that with concrete. What you end up with is sort of a telescoping system where it starts really big on the surface and it gets narrower the further down you go. You also, what that does is it creates a redundant security layer. Concrete pipe, concrete pipe, concrete pipe. The purpose for that is to protect the water. So even if one layer of all that casing is compromised, you have another layer in there to basically offer the same protection. Now most of the aquifers of the water tables in Pennsylvania aren't any deeper than a couple hundred feet at most. So what we'll do is we'll employ the casing down to certain depths. And the deeper we go, the narrower the casing gets. And once we're 1,000 plus feet past the water table, then we go to one layer, because there's no threat to the water at that point. The next step is completion, hydraulic fracture stimulation, or fracking. It is not, as it's referred to, hydrofracking. That is a misnomer, and it's labeled incorrectly. There's no such thing as hydrofracking. Hydraulic fracturing. When we frack, for those of you, well, I'll just walk through it. For fracking, it involves sending a small charge down that wellbore, and we do this in stages. And we'll start all the way at the end of the wellbore. we'll send a charge down that basically cracks the shale. And we do that in stages. And we follow that by flowing water, a mixture of water, sand, and some chemicals down that hole at high pressure. That slurry mix is forced into those big cracks and creates thousands, millions of little cracks, fissures. When that happens, the gas that's trapped in that shale is allowed to escape. And that's completing the well. That's the completion process. Again, fracking, there's some science involved. And this is inside what they call the frac van. Basically, it's, as it's labeled here, the Command Central. It's sort of like the Space Center down in Houston. They have people in there 24/7, and it's not just these two. There are people off to this side that we couldn't fit in the picture. And that truck is always occupied, and people are always monitoring that process. And they're looking at everything. They're looking at the mixture of the water and the sand, the depth, the time, the pressure, everything. There's a lot of equipment on site when we frack. And the folks that work in there know exactly what's going on at all times. Water impoundments. Some of you may have seen these around. We need the water impoundments to flow the water down the hole in order to frack. And we've built, I don't have a number, but we've built a handful of impoundments here in this township. This particular impoundment contains fresh water. We'll keep those impoundments filled until we need them for fracking, and then that water will be pumped to the particular site. We'll use temporary water lines and pump it to the site. What we found was, if you see the baffles on the front here, what we found was we used to have impoundments just sort of open. And when people would go in there, if they needed to fill up trucks or they needed to get water out of the impoundments, they would throw their line in there. And if they weren't paying attention, the line might catch the liner and rip it. So we'd have water leaks, and we'd have to go out there and fix it, and it just got old. So we had to devise a better system and a safer system. So we have these baffles on here. Basically, they can pull up, they can tie into there, take the water out without risk of tearing the liner or compromising the impoundment. What you also see in this picture, you can see it in the front, but it extends all the way across the impoundment, is the bird netting. The bird netting is there to keep animals out of the water. We don't want animals going into the pits for obvious reasons. Somebody has to fish them out, it stinks, and it compromises the fresh water.
Do you ever have birds go in?
Well, not anymore, that's why we have bird netting.
Okay, thanks.
The final step is production. That's when the wells are actually producing gas. Basically what you're left with on a site, I mean, the rig goes away, all the fracking equipment goes away, and there are plenty of sites around here where you can pull right up and take a look at these. And you're left with some minimal equipment relative to the drilling process, and those are producing wells. And that's a shot of a multiple well site. I think there are, looking at this, I think there are 6 wells. And you can see the wellheads sort of in the middle. They look like upside down letter L's. And we put jersey barriers in front of everything and fence to protect, protect them from people maybe backing into them or driving into them. But that is a typical completed site. Now this particular site that you're looking at, this was freshly completed. So I mean that's right at the tail end of all of our processes once we're buttoning everything down. Water usage. We do use a couple million gallons of water per well when we frack. And people, I guess everything's relative. If you say 3 million gallons of water, that's a large number until you stack it up against other uses. Power generation in Pennsylvania uses 5 billion gallons of water. Industry uses over 1 billion. Right in the middle we have other. That's recreation. Those are things like ski slopes, golf courses, swimming pools, sprinkler systems. Then you have mining. So at twice the expected peak of 3,000 wells per year, we would only be using 60 million gallons of water a day on average. And again, what I've advised people is go out to the Susquehanna head out east, take a little drive, stand on the bank of the Susquehanna when all the snow is melting, and you'll get 3 million gallons of water go by you in a couple of seconds. So again, everything's relative. What goes into the well? It's probably hard to see. This is a sort of a limited overview of the chemicals that go in there. Range was the first company to voluntarily disclose what we were using when we were fracking. Apparently that caught on because this is now a requirement in Pennsylvania. But we were ahead of the curve.
Does that divulging, does that meet the FRAC Act, Senator Casey's FRAC Act requirements?
Well, it wouldn't meet the FRAC Act requirements since the FRAC Act hasn't been passed.
Oh, I understand that.
Next. People ask if there's adequate regulation or they're concerned with adequate regulation. This is just a sample of some of the regulation in Pennsylvania for our industry. This is not all-inclusive. And again, this is hard to see. If you want to take a closer look, I invite you to come up and look at this after we're done. Act 223, which is the Oil and Gas Act. You've got Code 25, you've got Oil and Gas Conservation Law, Federal Clean Water Act, Clean Streams Law, Residual Waste, Water Resources Planning, Federal Regulations, Susquehanna River Basin, Corps of Engineers. Again, this is about half of what we have to do as an industry. We are probably the most regulated business in the state right now. What about the roads? As many of you know, in Washington County, a lot of the roads were not built to handle heavy equipment or 18-wheelers. They were built for cars. When we go into a particular area, we do damage to the roads. And we make no bones about that. In fact, that's one of my responsibilities, or one of my pleasures, is to go to various townships before we get there and inform them that we are going to wreck some of their roads, but also tell them that we're going to put them back. Okay, good. Some of the roads in Mount Pleasant, specifically, that we have repaved and or fixed, there's a list. Washington Avenue, we just wrapped that one up last year. We went from Mount Pleasant all the way through Chartiers with Washington Avenue, and I don't recall the cost, but I think it was right around $1 million. Ridge Road, Derry Road, Shirley Lane, Johnson, Plum Run, Martin, Agape, Caldwell. I'm not sure, I think this picture is Agape. But anyway, we have done this all over Washington County, and as I recall, we have over $20 million invested in Washington County just in road repair. And I know some of the skeptics out there would say, well, you should, because you guys wrecked them. Well, I guess to a certain degree, but when we put roads back, they go far beyond what existed before. In fact, the roads that we put back typically exceed PennDOT specs. They go far beyond PennDOT specs. And they are built for a purpose. They are built to handle our traffic. And our traffic is a bit of an anomaly out in the world. There's a lot of heavy equipment and there's a lot of big trucks. We have to build roads that are strong enough and durable enough to accommodate that traffic. So they're certainly not going to have any issues with passenger vehicles or cars. Inconveniences. I don't think we've ever tried, well, let me back that up. The drilling process is construction. It's construction and it's industrial. And with any construction or industrial job, you're going to have dirt, you're going to have noise, you're going to have a lot of traffic. In our case, it's 24-hour operations. But the key, and something to keep in mind, is it's temporary. It really depends on the number of wells we're going to drill on a particular site. It depends on, obviously, local regulation that mandates when we can and can't work. It depends on the availability of equipment. It depends on leasing, but it is temporary. Now, as promised, I'm going to dive into some of the specific sites here in Mount Pleasant. And I hope I pronounced this right. It's Meniki? Meniki. Okay, I'm sorry. This is one site in particular, Menike. We have, I think this thing was permitted for 10 wells. We had 10 permits issued from the DEP. We are drilling 5 wells. We're going to drill 5. The 2, 3, 5, 8, and 10. Those numbers have meaning, the 2, 3, 5, 8, and 10. We have to submit plats, and basically the plats are a diagram of where the wells are. And each one of those wells on that plat has to be labeled, and we give them numbers. So for those of you who have seen the plats or are going to go look at them, those are the wells we plan to drill. The entrance to the Carter-Menike site is Menike Lane, for those of you who know where that is. The next one is the Chiarelli. Again, 5 wells. I think we had this permitted for 8 or 10 wells, but we're only doing 5. Originally, and this Google Earth image is old. I think it's from last summer or last fall. And you can see Chiarelli Lane directly across the street from the school. That was the original route that we designated as the access road to get to the pad. We have changed that due to the proximity of the school, of Fort Cherry School. So we are going to come in off Bowen Road, which is sort of off to the left. You can see it over there. And we cut an access road across that lot. One of the goals was to reduce the traffic in front of the school or near the school. So, and that was, we addressed those concerns. I guess, in the initial planning stages, it looked good on paper. In discussions with the school, in discussions with a lot of parents, a lot of residents, we came to realize that maybe we should seek an alternate route. Something else we've done as a result of the discussions with Fort Cherry, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the layout of the school. Surprisingly, though, there is only one way in and one way out. One road in, it's the same road out. So if there was an emergency in the school, it could cause a heck of a logjam. What we've done in multiple discussions with the school is we have agreed to build an emergency egress route from the school off school property. And I don't know what the road is at sort of the bottom here off to the west side, but that's where it's going to deposit. No, it's not Fort. It's off Fort Cherry, whatever that road is. Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah, it sort of goes underneath down here. But we have agreed to build a secondary exit road for the school because we recognize that that's kind of an issue. Ohio Valley Bible Camp. The information I have is we're going to do 6 wells on that site. I don't know how many were permitted, but we're drilling 6. That's off Agape Road and Bible Camp Lane, or Bible Camp Road. It's my understanding also that there were some, I guess, cabins or I don't know, camp houses or something that they had on the property. And those have been removed, and I think we're going to help out with some new ones. But,
you did.
Sorry?
You did.
Okay. But anyway, so we have 6 wells lined up for that particular site. That was pretty much it for the slideshow. Again, I want to reiterate why we're here tonight, why Range is here tonight. This is not a pro drilling rally. This is not a pro range, event. Basically, we wanted you all to understand our options. We have, like I said before, because I need to make this clear, this whole thing has to do with business. We have tried to cooperate with the township. We have made a lot of accommodations. We've made a lot of concessions. I'm not sure how much has been communicated publicly, but based on the phone calls we've all received in the last 2 days, it's very apparent that many of you have been in the dark. Some of that is on us. Most of it is not. This is, again, this is all about being able to drill wells in a positive business environment. With the ordinance that we have proposed, the language that we have proposed, we have not asked for anything out of the ordinary. We have not asked for some wild and crazy concessions. And we have not asked for special treatment. And what this all boils down to, if you wanted to get very specific, the crux of the issue is two specific matters. One of which is conditional versus permitted use. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the difference, so if you are, bear with me. Like I said, there's always somebody out there, even if it's one person, who doesn't know. With permitted use, which is the existing language, by the way, that's the existing ordinance, the one under which we operate. In essence, the conditions are all front-loaded. Any kind of requirement for what we do is front-loaded. We know that ahead of time. We have to do A through G, for example. We go into the township, we say, here's the checklist, here's the stuff to back up A through G. We plan to drill on the ABC site. And they say, okay, you've met all the requirements, you've checked all the boxes. We look through it, everything is complete, have at it, go drill. That is, in essence, again, I'm oversimplifying, but that is permitted use. Conditional use is just the opposite. We would go to the township and we would say, we have a proposed site, whatever it might be, okay, the ABC farm. And they say, that's fine, you have to go see, for example, the zoning board. Or you have to go talk to the planning commission. We'll go talk to the planning commission, we'll deliver our case. The planning commission might assign 5 conditions. You have to do A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, go do that and then go see our zoning board. So we go do that, we come back a month later and we see the zoning board. And they say, well, that's great, you've completed this stuff. Now do our A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, we'll go do that. Once you guys are done with that, come see us again. So we'll come back and see the zoning people. They'll look at it and say, you've met the requirements. We now give you the thumbs up to go talk to the supervisors. And we go through it again. Now, at some point, and I have gone through this in other townships, that conditional use process can drag on, and drag on, and drag on, and drag on, because it becomes a moving target. Those supervisors can keep assigning conditions if they see something that they missed, or there's a gap somewhere. Okay? This has absolutely nothing to do with favorable treatment or trying to get around an ordinance or circumvent any kind of local regulation. The difference between conditional use and permitted use has to do with timing. With the amount of money, the amount of equipment involved in what we do, the level of logistics that's involved with what we do, and this is going to sound real basic, we need to be able to plan it. With conditional use, we can't, because we don't know when we'll get approval. It could be a week, it could be 6 months, it could be anything in between. That's the difference, and that's one issue. Again, the existing ordinance is permitted use. The proposed ordinance from the township is conditional use. And I'll explain why in a minute. The other issue has to do with trailers. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. On a drilling site, there are different sets of people. And those different sets of people perform different functions. One set of people, employees, are referred to as the rig hands. And those are what the name implies. They get their hands on the rig. Those are the guys you see out there in the coveralls. They're usually dirty because they're the ones doing the grunt work. Those are the rig hands. Okay? The other set of people are basically management or supervisory personnel. They are on site to do what the name implies, which is supervise the operations, meaning the rig hands, the drilling, the contractors coming in and out, make sure all the equipment is functioning. They're there for that purpose and that purpose only. Now, in the past, I would say in almost every other state, but also in the past in Pennsylvania, on a drilling pad, you would be able to walk onto that pad and you see a number of trailers. And by trailer, I mean, for those of you familiar with these, construction trailers, right? Just the oblong, the oblong construction trailers. A couple of those would be designated as sleeping quarters for the rig hands. A couple other trailers would be designated as basically stationary offices for those supervisory personnel. Now, this made a lot of sense when every rig hand was from out of state. Nowadays, it's not the case. I'd say roughly half the rig hands we employ now are from Pennsylvania. So maybe the rig hand trailers don't make that much sense. The rig hands work 12-hour shifts for 14 days, and then they're off for 14 days. So obviously, if they're from Pennsylvania, they're going to go back and forth every night if they live around here. The supervisors, on the other hand, work 2 weeks, 24 hours a day. Where are they going to go? They're there 24 hours a day for the purposes of safety, number one, and continuity of operations, number two. The supervisors and the managers we have on those sites are seasoned professionals. They are long-time industry vets, and they are that way because they know how to do things right. If they weren't the best of the best, they wouldn't still be working in the industry. And that's why they are in a supervisory role. Now, the issue has come down to trailers in general. The rig hands, we'll put that aside for now. We have told the township multiple times we cannot operate without those supervisors on site. We cannot operate because it compromises the safety of not only every person on that pad, but everyone within a certain proximity. I don't know about you, but I would not set up a drilling rig if I didn't have somebody watching it. I mean, a lot of this boils down to common sense, but it is a safety issue. And again, these are not bunk trailers. If you went to a site and you saw one of these supervisors' trailers, half of it is an office. He's got a drafting desk and a file cabinet and a fax machine and phones and cork board, because they're there to work. I mean, that's the purpose of having them on the site. They are working there. The township refuses to bend on the trailers. I'm not talking about the rig hand sleeping on site. I'm talking about having the supervisors on site. It falls under the regular zoning ordinance. The draft ordinance refers back to the regular zoning language. So in essence, they're covering down by using another ordinance. But the trailers do not meet the zoning requirements. We've had the discussion, hey, you have mobile homes in Mount Pleasant. Yes, we do. Okay? When you have a construction project in Mount Pleasant, you have construction trailers. Yes, we do. So why are ours different? Because they fall right in the middle. Now, a lot of this has to do with communication. We have been communicating on a regular basis with the township since last June regarding these issues. The last communication we received, and this was brought up in some media reports, was a letter from the township addressed to Range, basically saying, thanks for stopping by, but we're going to continue to do it our way. Okay? The media report was correct on that. We did not comment. We did not write back. We did not respond, because at that stage we figured we were out of options. Again, we don't want to challenge anything. We don't want to take anyone to court. In that letter, it did mention legal action. That is one option. That's one option. The other option is to get a cooperative spirit and relationship established with the township so we can meet in the middle. And again, this boils down to those two issues, conditional versus permitted, and the supervisor's trailers. That's why we're all sitting here tonight. That's why we're all spending time together tonight, because of those two issues. So we did mention legal action as one option. That is not the best option, obviously. We would like to find middle ground. We would like to cooperate, and we would like to continue operating here. Now, there's another option. There's another option that I'd like to throw out there, and that is Range pulling out of Mount Pleasant altogether. It's been floating around that somehow Range needs Mount Pleasant more than Mount Pleasant needs Range. Fair enough, but keep in mind we have 450,000 de-risked acres in Washington County alone. We can go drill somewhere else for a while. It would keep us busy for a few years. Now, again, that's not the best option, but we have discussed it. We've had numerous conversations about this. In fact, it went all the way up the chain and right back down. It is a business decision. It is not. It's not a personal decision. It's a business decision. None of this is personal. We have put information out there. Some people have taken this as a personal affront, and for that, I'm saddened and I'm disappointed because this is not personal. I happen to like a lot of the folks in this township, including the supervisors, on a personal level. This is all about business, and I need everybody here to understand that. But that is an option that's on the table, is Range pulling out. Obviously, if we pull out, that affects the active leases here. So those of you who are relying on that will be disappointed as well.